This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, March 20th, 2023.
Case file number 10017, written by Kiss Me Goodbye. The light bulb exploded, and then it was brand new. This happened like an hour ago, and I'm still pretty shaken. I went to turn on the light in my bedroom so I could do some cleaning, and the light switch shocked me and made a crackling noise. The lights went on for a second, then there was a sound of glass breaking and the light was off by itself. Obviously, my first instinct was to get all the glass shards off myself and get out of the room. I bandaged a few spots where the shards had cut me and went back to the room to inspect the damage. The light is working fine now, and I started to clean up, but when I checked the ceiling, every light bulb in the room was intact. I even felt for cracks, and all of them are pristine. I know I didn't hallucinate it because I just spent 45 minutes cleaning glass shards off of everything, but I have no idea where they came from or what the hell happened.
Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories.
Creepy file number 83, written by Far Cry Fan 15. Secrets of the Deep Appalachian Mountains. Okay, so first off, these stories are 100% true. Most were told by family and friends through the years, along with some of my own encounters in the rural mountains and ridgelines of my county. Of course, as with all creepy stories, to give you a good scare, take them with a grain of salt. However, I must still say that these stories are as real as me sitting here writing this up. I hope you all find these as interesting as I do. Background: I have grown up in eastern Kentucky for several years since the age of 1. My family, both sides, have grown up in the rural Appalachian their whole lives as well, but as with modern times, moved to this small town nestled here in a valley situated in between rolling hills and deep ridgelines. Where the following stories take place is a rural area nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It's got a name and it's considered a county. However, the area where my dad's family grew up in within this area, and where these stories come from, is more like a collection of deep ridges and mountain folks than anything else, just to clear up any confusion that this is an actual town. During the early days of the settlers, these mountains were home to the Cherokee Indians. Many cemeteries in this area actually have around 30 to 40 graves of Native Americans buried there, marked with stones and rocks rather than a more traditional Indian burial routine. In the 1800s, George Washington's aide-de-camp, Colonel Grayson, was bestowed upon him a 70,000-acre piece of land, which is now where my town is located today. Story number 1. In the 1970s or 80s, my mom and her aunt, along with her small cousins, were driving on an empty road just outside of town when they crested the top of a hill where an abandoned farmhouse stood. They stopped the car in its tracks when they saw a massive, hovering saucer-shaped craft hovering over the house. Frightened, my mother and her aunt booked it out of there at a high rate of speed. Scared, they continued down the mountain back to town quickly. However, when they looked in the rearview mirror, they saw the craft coming after them fast, tailing the car and keeping up with them. They attempted multiple times to evade the craft, but to no avail. It chased them for over a mile back to town until finally, just at the edge of the county road that leads back into town, it finally disappeared. My mother has told the story at least 100 times to family and friends, most of whom believe her, as they too have seen strange lights in the sky in and around the various areas of the community, though some don't. She drew me a picture of the spacecraft a few years ago, which I still have. It's gray and almost metallic looking. By the way, she drew it as having red lights on all edges of the bottom of the craft, along with a few green lights on the sides of it. Story number 2. When my mother was a child, old enough to know when something was going on, she was at home with her parents and siblings one night, and a man whom her mother and family already knew and were acquainted with barged into the house terrified out of his wits. He lived in a cabin deep within the woods some miles away. During his stay there, he reported poltergeist activity, orbs, and other bizarre activity within the property and the house itself. He would go on to tell my grandmother that reportedly he was tormented all night by a demon who threw pots and pans, glasses, and even furniture at him. This went on for almost the entire night. It would throw them completely out of the cabinets, almost hitting him with it. It also reportedly started knocking and tapping on the sides of the house and thumping the walls and ceiling. Finally, he mustered up the nerves to utter the Lord's Prayer and attempt to rebuke it in the name of Jesus Christ. This seemed to piss him off even more and cause it to become even more aggressive, and now would try to kill him with heavier objects. He ran from the house and spent around 7 to 8 hours walking through the woods and rural county roads back to my grandmother's house. While on his way to the house, he reported that he could hear footsteps trailing him in the woods and next to the road, but he couldn't see anything. He continued this for several hours until he finally reached their house. Story number 3. In the 90s in town, sat a white brick house at the top of a small hill, where a man and his wife lived for several years. The man was in his 40s or 50s, and the woman somewhere around the same age, I believe. Anyways, one day, while my mother was working at a local gas station where the woman also coincidentally worked at, the man had called her saying that something was wrong with the gas in the house and he was going to look at it to see if he could fix it. The gas was located in the basement. He went downstairs and laid on his back and crawled up under the thing to see what happened. He lit a match and immediately the house exploded, sending rubble everywhere and a massive fireball and smoke that could be seen throughout town. The man's wife, who saw the explosion from the gas station, ran home to discover the house gone and nothing left but its foundations. The man's body, as one might expect in a situation like this, was blown into pieces with body parts even littering some neighboring houses. Since then, it has become a local legend that the man's spirit haunts the house that was built on the land where the original one stood. The show Ghost Hunters, or maybe another ghost hunting TV series, actually filmed an episode here because of the experiences by the home's inhabitants. Everything from pots and pans rattling and stuff being thrown around to actual manifestations inside the residence. Case file number 10,018, written by Raro Danny R., the world's coziest glitch. Alright, so about a year ago, I bought my favorite sweater. I've been consistently wearing this sweater and I'm obsessed with it. Polyester material, shiny, athletic, etc. So about 2 to 3 months ago, it suddenly disappeared. We do not live in a huge house, so stuff doesn't just disappear. I tried searching for it in my gym, school, etc. Suddenly, today, during laundry, I found it like nothing, right on top of the laundry. I told my wife. She said I probably accidentally found it while cleaning. I cleaned our room yesterday. Note, we always clean, so stuff doesn't go missing since our house is generally clean anyway. I don't take this as just brushing it off. How has my favorite sweater missing for 3 months with recognizable design, material, and look suddenly end up in the top of my laundry? I'm not just gonna brush this one off. Case file number 10,019, written by MuchBite9284. My dog is an imposter? My dog was whining to go outside. Mind you, it's about 3:30 in the morning, so I let him out into my fenced yard and stand at the door so he can do his business. He goes to the side of the house normally, so I don't think much of it. But after a minute, I call for him because it's cold and I want to sleep. The way my fence is set up is it runs the length of the house, but stops at the back and has a gate to go from the front/side yard to the backyard. The gate stays closed with a padlock and is about 8 foot tall. The reason I'm worried is because I clearly saw my dog go to the right side of my house when I let him out, and when I called him, he immediately popped out from the left side. There's absolutely no way I would not have seen him cross in front of me since I was kind of hurrying him. Also, when he was whining to go out, he was jumping around and happy, but after he came back, he stopped in front of my steps and sat down and just stared at me. This is very unusual for him. I had to go out and basically coax him into the house where he sat and stared at me from across the room until I put him in his room. Am I crazy, or did I just let something in my house that's not my dog? Did things just glitch and he happened to just be on the other side after? He's been acting weird since he's come inside. My dog is going back and forth between the 2 doors to my bedroom and sniffing around them. This isn't his normal behavior since he knows he's not allowed in my room. My dog and I had a conversation, and I think we agreed that if he's a skinwalker, that he'll switch out with my real dog once in a while. Oh, and he won't kill me. Bonus file, written by Embarrassed Medium 153. My boyfriend's phone was stolen by Casper? About a month ago, my boyfriend and I were on the couch at our home watching a scary movie around 9 p.m. He has two phones, his personal cell and his work phone. Once we finished the movie, I said I was going to get the shower going and wait for him to join me after he called his daughter to tell her goodnight. He used his personal phone to call her, leaving his work phone on the couch alongside his personal one once he hung up. He came to check on me in the shower and told me he would be in after he grabbed some clothes and a towel. However, after going back to the bedroom to grab those, he noticed that his personal phone was missing from the couch. He was only gone for about a minute from the living room to the bathroom. He spent another 5 minutes looking for it everywhere in the house, even tried calling it from his work phone several times before giving up and getting into the shower with me. About 30 minutes pass. He tells me about the incident and we think nothing of it since I promised to help him find it after we got out. However, once we got out, we spent another 5 minutes tearing the house apart. Still nothing. He and I both called his personal phone several times, but we couldn't hear it anywhere. I finally have the idea to try and ping it using the shared location services. That's when it shows up, claiming to be in the neighbor's front yard? He thought I was joking with him, until I showed him my screen. Neither of us had left the house. Both the front door and the back door still remained locked from when we got home earlier that day. I thought he was actually the one pranking me. He promised he wasn't. I stood in the doorway as he got a jacket on and went outside with his work phone, using it as a flashlight and to call his personal phone. He looked for it for a while, but then I watched as he bent down, dug in our neighbor's bushes, and retrieved his flashing personal phone that lit up due to the incoming call. It had been raining and was very muddy, yet his phone was completely dry and seemingly untouched when he retrieved it. As he called it, the phone didn't make any sounds, just buzzed. Yet when he double-checked that he kept the ringer on, thinking it got turned off, it was on, as it should have been playing his ringtone, but it never did that the entire time we looked for it. To this day, we cannot explain how it never rang even with the ringer on, was still dry after sitting in the rain and mud for about 40 minutes total, and how it ended up buried in the neighbor's bushes. Ever since this incident with the phone, more strange things have happened. Things have been knocked over in the middle of the night, I hear footsteps when I'm home alone, see things out of the corner of my eyes, and the scariest one yet, we have light fixtures that you click on and off like flat buttons, not the switches. He and I were sitting on the couch in the living room when all of a sudden the lights in the dining room began to turn on and off. The creepy part was that the buttons were being clicked rapidly and loudly too. I would have chalked it up to faulty wiring if it was just the lights going crazy, but the buttons were physically being pressed and making noise too, as if someone was pressing it on and off very quickly. He said he has never experienced anything like this in his house before. It started happening after I moved in. After reading some comments, I'm beginning to think it's some sort of entity. It might be attached to me. I've had other mysterious experiences before, too. Case file number 10,020, written by Blank Books. The multiverse is losing track of our things. I've been an enthusiast follower of glitch in the matrix stories for a while, as simulation theories and such are extremely fascinating. I never thought I would experience something though. Disclaimer. I was not under the influence of any substances when any of this took place. I live alone and have alarms in my home. I smoke plant mass regularly, 3 to 4 times a week, and clean my grinder every month. I'm medically diagnosed with OCD and know where everything is at all times. I was cleaning my grinder last night, and I have 2 small white trays to scoop it with. I dropped one in my kitchen on dark gray tile and couldn't find it despite the color and how small my kitchen is. I looked and looked and looked as it seemingly vanished. After not finding it, I proceeded to clean the rest of my stuff. This morning, it was on the opposite side of my counter where I keep a lighter, my grinder, and the keef scooper things in a drawer. It was just sitting on the counter that I had looked at and walked past after losing it last night several times. This probably seems small, but I'm literally shaking as I type this. There is no logical way it could have ended up there. Something finally happened to me, and I don't know how to feel. All doors locked. I live alone in a single-level home, and my sister and girlfriend have a key to my home, but both are out of town. Ring cameras and Arlo cameras inside didn't catch anything. Case file number 10,021, written by Bigger on the Inside, 42. The never-ending supply of mac and cheese. This is ridiculous, but I have no explanation. A while back, I bought a set of vintage craft mac and cheese promo watches from a yard sale. One was triangle-shaped and one was rectangle. This is important. I recently sold those watches on my Etsy store. I remember grabbing them out of the drawer and we shipped them off, no problem. Not long after, I got a message from the buyer saying they got the watches, but that they got 2 triangle watches and really wanted the rectangle one. He even sent a photo as proof. I checked the listing and the photo shows 1 triangle and 1 rectangle watch. So how did the buyer get 2 triangle watches? I go back and check the drawer and sure enough, there is a rectangle watch in there. But there were only ever 2 watches to begin with, not 3. I asked my store partner if he remembered more than 2 watches and he didn't. He clearly remembers me buying 2 watches. Okay, weird, but whatever. I shipped the rectangle watch to the buyer and all is well. Until today. My partner was filling orders this morning and found another rectangle watch in the drawer. So essentially, we ended up with 2 sets of watches, 2 triangles and 2 rectangles. But the listing only showed a quantity of 1 set and we both only remember buying 1 set. Do I just have a never-ending supply of vintage craft mac and cheese promo watches now? Bonus file, written by Sanibel98. My 200-year-old church is haunted. The church campus consists of the sanctuary, the office, an empty, decrepit house where the priest used to live that was later used as a meeting space until it was condemned, and a cemetery with the oldest graves being those of War of 1812 soldiers. All the buildings have stone exteriors. A priest died in the house in the late 1800s. He was old, so nothing nefarious there. But he still haunts the place, which seems odd to me since he was a priest and obviously believed in heaven, the afterlife. Why stick around? When I first started working there, I was in the office with a member of the congregation who told me that on several occasions when they left the old house and turned off all the lights, they would turn around and see the lights that had been switched back on inside, through the windows. I believed in the paranormal even then and have had an experience myself, so I was intrigued. When I left the office that day by myself, I turned off the lights. At the last light switch, I felt almost an electric buzz surge through my finger. The office itself is old, so it wouldn't have surprised me if something wasn't grounded right, etc. Didn't think anything unusual about it. I went back to my desk to grab my things and lock the door, and the light switch I had turned off was on. Keep in mind, this was the same day as when I found out about the priest. I've tried asking him again to show me any sign that he's there, but he's never done anything else in the 4 years I've been working there. But without asking, I've seen flashes of light in a dark, windowless room. I'm not sure if it was pareidolia, but I saw a man cross in front of my headlights and disappear. He had dark hair and was wearing a white shirt. One time, I unlocked the deadbolt on the door to the church, and when I went to turn the knob to go inside, something turned it the opposite way in my hand. This was during lockdown, so definitely no one was inside. I ran. I've seen motion detector lights outside turn on by themselves, and when I've jumped in front of them waving my hands, they've never come on. I've heard this one from my boss who's a priest. The organist was practicing by themselves in the church when a pencil went flying across the room. My boss also told me that members have said they've seen the priest looking out of the windows of the house. The decrepit house is supposed to be torn down within the next year or 2. I'm not sure how or if that will affect the priest who won't leave. Maybe he finally will. Case file number 1022, written by Fiona, the pencil that controls the world. I have to say that I'm a person who could see a donkey flying and wouldn't think much of it. I will probably find it weird at first and then go about my day without thinking much of it. It's been a while that I've been listening to Glitch in the Matrix stories, and while thinking about if one has ever happened to me, nothing came up in my head. Until one day, without even thinking about glitches, this weird event from 10 years ago popped into my head. Keep in mind that I found the event very weird when it happened, but then I didn't think a lot about it. so my memory is a little blurry as to what really happened. I come from a small town in a small country. I was studying at a boarding school in the capital at the time, and on the weekends I would travel to my hometown. One Friday, before going back to my hometown, I went to a stationery shop with a friend of mine. I needed to buy a pack of refills for mechanical pencils, which are not sold in my small hometown. I remember buying one very well, because I wanted to cut the line out of worry of missing the bus, and my friend stopped me. She asked me if I knew who the man I was about to cut in line in front of was, but I didn't know. Turns out it was a famous folk singer, whom I had definitely heard of, but never knew how he looked since it's not my kind of music. This is irrelevant to the story itself, but it is the reason that I remember very well buying one refiller case for mechanical pencils. Afterwards, I traveled to my hometown, and as soon as I reached home, I realized that my pencil case, which contained all of my stationery stuff, was missing from my bag. I remember having it when I left the bus, and it must have fallen on my way home. To be fair, it was my fault for putting it at the top of an open bag that was full of other stuff, so it's no surprise that it fell. I went with my father to look for it by walking the path we had just followed to get home, but we couldn't find my pencil case. I had lost all my pens and pencils and all the other stationery stuff that was inside of it, so I was upset about it, but I was mostly upset about the new refiller pack that I had just bought earlier. Here's where things make no sense. That same weekend, I ended up finding 2 brand new mechanical pencil refill cases, identical to the one I had bought in my hometown, where they were not even sold. I found one the very next day, 10 steps from my home, and I'm surprised, but somehow I don't question it. I had this conviction that it was the same one that I had bought the day before. It makes no sense why it was there, since I lost the whole pencil case, and it would have been inside with the other things. And I'm sure that I didn't lose the pencil case on that spot, since I realized I had lost my pencil case as soon as I got home, and that area was within my field of view, so I would have immediately noticed if that was the case. It's a little blurry how I ended up with another identical and brand new refiller case, because it's been 10 years since the event. But from what I can remember, my father brought me the second refiller that very weekend, but I do not know where he found it. Pretty sure he did not buy it, but found it. I'm considering the second one a gift from the universe, I guess. However, I never recovered the rest of the things that I had lost, but hey, at least I got 2 new and identical refills, I guess. Bonus file, written by Lonely Ad 9225. Unexpected inspection by my dead boss. So this just happened last week. The warehouse I work at is reloading an empty trailer with a pallet jack. Once I filled it up with 30 pallets of merchandise, I decided to have one last look and inspect everything one last time before I closed it and got ready to send it on its way. I walked in and was halfway in when I saw my boss standing there. I froze in fear and I called out to him. I'm like, Alex, when did you come in here? He turned around and he was pale and ignored me, then walked out. This is not like him. Alex never ignores me, but it was as if he didn't know me. I then walked out confused and went to his office. The lights were out. I asked my coworker, why is Alex inside the container I was loading? I told her it's very strange. He was just standing there and he even ignored me. She was like, that's impossible. He left on an errand like 20 minutes ago and hasn't come back. I didn't believe her, so I went to the parking lot and his car wasn't there. Once I saw that, I felt dizzy and almost had a heart attack. I still have the image fresh in my mind of what I saw there. I saw him, but like I mentioned, it was more like a scary version of him. He looked pale and just scary and completely ignored me as if he didn't see me. Then afterwards, Alex had just been in a nasty car accident and didn't make it. I am beyond terrified to go back to work. But I have to go. I can't explain what happened. No, I don't do drugs, nothing like that. I know what I saw. I saw his ghost to make sure I finished my job. I just hope he doesn't keep appearing. After that happened, another coworker told me she was in the break room and she felt like someone was behind her and staring at her. She turned around and there was nobody there. Case file number 10,023, written by Kelly. My father is Unbound by Spacetime. My son, 8 male, and I, 42 female, were in his bedroom reading a story before bedtime. I had my back to the door and I was just reading a children's bedtime story to my almost asleep son when I heard from behind me my dad's voice calling my name. It startled me as we were home alone. I turned around quickly to see my dad just rounding the corner, heading down the stairs. I only saw the back of him, and only for a split second, but I knew it was him. I called out to him, but he didn't answer. I got up and quickly followed him. As I rounded the corner to the stairs, I saw him in a side profile, just turning the corner at the bottom of the stairs into the kitchen. I called out to him again, but still no answer. I was so confused. I headed quickly down the stairs to catch up to him, but as I rounded the corner into the kitchen, in an almost run at this point, he wasn't there. I ran through the kitchen into the living room, but the house was empty, totally quiet. Now I was more than confused. I checked the entire house. I checked the front and back doors, which were both still locked up tight. I called my dad on the phone and he answered straight away, and he was at home, 4 miles away, and hadn't left all evening. I was fully awake, I hadn't been drinking, and have never taken any mind-altering drugs. I have carbon monoxide alarms in the house, which I test weekly, so it's not that. I have no explanation for this, and I'm struggling to come up with any. Case file number 10024, written by Shih Tzu 13 Master, the dog with a grand secret. So I have this aging lapdog. I built a ramp for him to use when I opened the door, for him to pee, instead of him having to use the stairs. I would open the door, he'd run down the ramp, do his business in the garden, and then come back and have me lift him back up into the house. He won't take the stairs or go back up the ramp anymore. I just did the routine. He came back, waited to be lifted. I checked his butt in case I needed to clean it. I have him in my bed, so skid marks aren't going to happen, and then set him down on the floor in the hallway, drawing the door closed behind me. I followed him through the hallway and stepped into the living room. I threw another log in the fire and then turned to look through the open door to confirm that he's on his doggy sofa, waiting to be lifted into bed, but he wasn't there. I checked the kitchen, not there. Living room, still no. Bedroom, nope. Went back through the hallway to see if he had somehow ended up in the bathroom. Nope. What the hell, where is he? In desperation, just to confirm I'm not crazy, I opened the back door again to see if I didn't just imagine the entire sequence. And there he was, happily just returning from his pee. He didn't look worried at all, not at all having been left outside look on him. What the hell? I thought teleportation was firmly in the cat domain. Creepy file number 84, written by Holly Hot Dogs, an Unearthly South Haven experience. So I'm going to start by saying I'm basically a skeptic when it comes to paranormal, although I love hearing stories and listening to others' points of views when it comes to that kind of stuff. This is why I'm having such a hard time understanding what happened to me last September. My dad, grandma, grandpa, and I were attending my cousin's wedding in a small rural town just outside of South Haven, Michigan, late last summer. We rented a small house in town, which was located in a very wooded area just off a small lake. Something felt extremely off as soon as I got out of the car at our rental property. That's the best way I could describe it. Something felt off, and I was immediately uneasy. But being the skeptic that I am, I shrugged it off and chalked it up to being tired and anxious. The night we arrived, my dad and I were having a smoke outside and noticed how weird everything sounded. It was about 11 p.m. and there was no one else around. The trees were crackling incredibly loudly, and we were hearing strange animal noises, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Just the type of animal noises you would hear in rural Michigan, but they just sounded particularly strange for us, for some reason. We said our goodnights and went to bed. The next morning, my dad told me that he went outside for a smoke at about 2-ish that morning, and heard what sounded to him like someone close by banging on metal siding. He said it sounded like it was just next door, but didn't hear anything leading up to or preceding the loud banging, like footsteps or anything like that. We shrugged and laughed it off. The second night was when I heard the thing that I still can't stop thinking about 6 months later. It was about 11 p.m., maybe midnight, and I was having my last smoke of the night. My grandparents were already asleep, and my dad had just gotten into bed, but still awake watching TV. I was sitting on the stairs outside with my back to the house, looking straight out into the backyard. I heard someone shout my name in a very abrupt manner, loud and fast. It sounded like they were shouting towards me from the front of the house, like they were standing on the front porch shouting for me, knowing I was at the back of the house. It sounded just like my dad, but it couldn't be him because I didn't hear the front door open or close or anything. Being a skeptic, I reminded myself to stay calm, and I quickly walked back into the house. My dad was sound asleep now. There was no way that by the time I got to him, he could have gotten back into bed and then fallen asleep. I woke him up and asked if he was outside screaming my name. He looked confused and said of course not. I started to get really freaked out at this point. I tried to go to bed but couldn't get that scream out of my head. I was up all night trying to figure out what happened. I was honestly contemplating leaving, getting a hotel room somewhere close by and returning in the morning. Miraculously, I must have fallen asleep sometime around 3 a.m. We woke up the next morning and I was so ready to get the hell out of town. As soon as we left, the uneasy feeling I had the entire weekend disappeared. When I returned to work the next day, I told my coworker the weird experience I had. Her face immediately dropped. She proceeded to inform me that this is quite common in the Appalachian area regarding cryptids and other types of creatures. Apparently, they try to get your attention by mimicking someone close to you, and when you look at them, they kidnap you or something along those lines. But I was in Michigan. I tried to look up information about the town I was in, but didn't find anything remotely interesting. Has anyone else had a similar experience? Especially in Michigan.
Case notes for file 10,017. A light bulb exploded, and then it was brand new? So this might be related to quantum immortality? If you touched the circuitry of the light switch, and maybe there was some exposed wiring somehow, which does happen in older systems or circuitry, people don't quite install them right. So there's some issues like that. There's some people that have no paneling on the switch. There's just like the box sticking from the wall and there's a hole in the wall. So if that's the case in your situation, where there was some kind of exposure, maybe to the actual circuitry of the light switch, then maybe, especially if your hand was wet, you touched it, and because your hand was wet, the resistance, the ohms, would be much lower, and then even the smaller amount of amps in that light switch circuit, just 110 volts, because of the lowered resistance from your wet hand, that could result in death. Now, if that's not the case, if it was just a normal wall switch with nothing exposed, and your hand wasn't wet, then I'm not sure. I wonder why it was tripped at all? Why did the light bulb explode to such a great degree? And if it's the case where it wasn't quantum immortality, it seems like an actual local reset of the light bulb. But why would the universe do that? Why would anyone care? Is it a developer in the simulation? You're just looking over the parameters and saying, oh yeah, this light bulb exploded when it wasn't supposed to, so let's reset it. Why would that matter? It's just a light bulb. Wonder if the cuts that you had, maybe the cuts would have killed you. Maybe you would have gotten an infection. Did the cuts disappear? If you were still cut? I'm not sure. This is a strange one for sure. It's like a localized time reset. But not time exactly, it's just the physical object repaired itself. Like the universe casted reparo on it. How peculiar. But it's even beyond that, because the glass shards still were there. So it's not just reparo where they came back into themselves, reformed like Humpty Dumpty, put back together. No, they were duplicated. The mass was recreated from somewhere. That's not normal, because that should require an enormous amount of energy, even just for glass. Any physical matter has so much energy bound in the strong nuclear force. It's almost incomprehensible. A single feather could blow up an entire city if all the mass of it was converted instantly into energy at 100% efficiency. Even atomic bombs don't even come close to 100% efficiency. Case notes for the creepy file number 83. Secrets of the Deep Appalachian Mountains. Yeah, so obviously for me, UFOs, yay. They always catch my eye. Stories revolving around UFOs, unidentified objects. Now, is it an alien? Maybe, maybe not. I'm sure the military is testing all kinds of weird experimental aircraft. The fact that it pursued you, but didn't seem to be able to catch up, kind of leads me more towards it not being alien. They would have caught up before you could even start the car or turn it around or whatever. Alien technology would be so far beyond us, it would be indistinguishable from magic. There's an extra quote of the day from Arthur C. Clarke. Sufficiently advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic. Yeah, think about going back to the days of a caveman and bringing them a cell phone or talking about a computer or the internet or electricity or any of that. It would be like magic to them. They wouldn't even be able to comprehend it. we might be able to recognize that it's a ship, but how it functions, its propulsion systems, its ability to resist gravity, nullify it, invert it, to not account for G-forces, for any inhabitants of the ship, and so on. It's a different realm entirely. But yeah, just the idea of the Appalachians is fascinating to me. Exposed wilderness that's almost untouched, and just tens of thousands of square miles of majestic, pristine wilderness is so cool. And what's out there? Mystery, unexplored. You know, I would love to walk the entire trail that there is on the Appalachian mountain range. I think it's 2,100 miles from West Virginia all the way to Maine. And apparently it takes people like half a year to walk it. Obviously with a lot of camping, and there's small towns nestled between the trails where you can walk off and just go stay in a hotel, take a shower, and so on. If I did that, I wouldn't do it alone. I would definitely have someone else come with me. Doing it alone would be quite a undertaking. It would remove some of the magic. I mean, part of the magic of it and the thrill is taking on the world, traveling it with a companion. A lot of things coming in my life. A lot of adventures I've yet to embark on. And now time for the quote of the day. Sometimes you never appreciate the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. Dr. Seuss. I mean, it's so important to appreciate the moment, isn't it? The present is called the present for a reason. It's literally a gift every single minute we're alive. You want that gift to endure, but the best you can do is just play the hand you're dealt and enjoy where you're at. Now, obviously, if you're being tortured in some prison camp as a prisoner of war, it'd be difficult, but assuming your life is basic level decent, appreciate that. I think probably a good idea, and appreciate the moments you have with the people you love, because that's what really matters. Friends, family, acquaintances, even work colleagues, they all matter. They should anyways. If you value them, and your actions show that, usually it'll be reciprocated. And then who knows what kind of adventures you'll get off to with them. Exciting times. Case notes are file 10,018. The world's coziest glitch. No, you shouldn't brush it off. It's not something you can just push to the side. Even though it's small, it's inexplicable. Short of the weirdest explanation, like someone broke in, stole your sweater, wore it for 3 months, and then brought it back. That doesn't make any sense. The only possible way I could try to explain this normally is one of your friends and family members came in, stole it, temporarily borrowed it, and then returned it. But that doesn't really make any sense to me. Is that something your friends and family would do? I don't think so. Short of that, it's just classic DOP. De-rendered from the universe and then reappeared on top of your laundry. The exact causes of de-render and reappearance is not known, but it is very clear that it happens often. Case notes are file 10,019. My dog is an imposter? I'm quite certain that your dog, your new dog, appreciates the no murder boundary setting discussion. It's important to be frank, right? Honest, clear about your expectations. No murder, and switching out occasionally with your real dog. Reasonable expectations, I would say. So in the comments, to further iterate your confusion, you mentioned that both gates were locked. So unless he somehow scaled the fence, went all the way around, scaled the other fence, and came back on that side, maybe he's not a skinwalker, and he just encountered this random spacetime anomaly where he teleported a small distance. If they can teleport people miles away, then why not a few feet? Never ceases to amaze me. In the distances and the locations, they're always specific to the individual or even the pet in this case, if that's what happened. They have to be intentional. And is someone just messing with you? Is this like a TikTok video from the real universe where people prank people in the simulation and they have like millions of views in the real world? I could see that. Case notes for the bonus file. My boyfriend's phone was stolen by Casper? Yeah, it's a mischievous little Casper you have on your hands, and all these pranksters, these spirits, they embody me if I die and become a fragment of a soul. Now, is it attached to you? Or maybe it's actually not just a prankster. Maybe it's a jealous ghost. Maybe you came into the picture, living with him in his house, and the ghost got jealous and wanted to have him all to him or herself. Maybe it's a female prankster-ish spirit. Could be. If it's a jealous person in real life before they died, then they would still be jealous as a spirit. So maybe they were attached to him in the house, not you. Or maybe it is attached to you and it's the same story. They're just jealous that now you're with someone else. And now time for the quote of the day. The master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. Stephen McCraney. We all have a history in our lives, all the trials and tribulations that we've faced. Part of those includes failures. You can't have success without failure. Virtually impossible. Don't let failure hold you down. Just embrace it, learn from it, and move on. You'll be better. And you have to do that to become a master. And don't fret. It's part of the natural journey. Case notes are filed 10,020. The multiverse is losing track of our things? My impression is that the universe operates on a point-based system of quantized energy. Electrons have their shells, and they can only operate in specific quantized versions or orbits. Discrete packets of energy like photons, everything is packaged neat and tightly. So it makes sense to a computer to store information. Even though we can't get to that information, because observation from the simulation, anything inside of it, changes the state of whatever we're observing. From above it, it may be possible that they can track everything, and maybe sometimes there's still errors, and because of those errors, there's things that can happen like this, where objects derender, eventually are found and corrected, and they reappear. That would be my guess in what's happening most of the time. I think it's possible that there's also intentional derenders, maybe to mess with us, prank with us, maybe to affect our decision-making process in the moment. Things like that I think are quite common. But it's just information and corrective measures taken by the real world's supercomputer. Case notes are filed 10,021. The never-ending supply of mac and cheese. You know, it's curious, even though most people probably know I hate cheese now. As a kid, I didn't mind mac and cheese. Now, I can't do it, but maybe it's because they don't put much real cheese in it. It's mostly a fake powder. Nutritious yeast, I don't know what they use. But yeah, it just tasted kind of salty, I guess. But yeah, I would say this is just another duplication event. So, derender, reappearance, and duplication. The duplications probably apply from other universes, the multiverse, where copies of items in those universes are mistakenly restored, but only in the wrong universe, basically. And if that's true, then in another universe, there's a customer that didn't receive any watches at all. And he's a bit annoyed, because they just don't exist in that universe. Case notes for the bonus file. My 200-year-old church is haunted. They say that if you have unfinished business, you're more likely to remain behind as a fragment. There's a stronger wave in the ocean that's left behind, so it'll still ripple out no matter what, but I think if the unfinished business is completed, then maybe the waves impact on the hard surface and dissipate more quickly. Something like that. You ever have like that when you go on vacation or you travel somewhere far, and you have in the back of your head, did I lock the door? Did I turn off the stove? Think of that as unfinished business, but just amplified, 100-fold or something. This desperate need to have closure in your life, something that you didn't complete or you missed, or someone that you didn't say you loved, or something along those lines. Well, this is what I expect is happening here with spirits and ghosts. And of course, if the unfinished business, if you're a bad person, well, the unfinished business could be something that's impossible to complete. Like if Hitler had a spirit lingering behind, we'd all hope that his spirit wouldn't be able to finish his task, just fade away. I do wonder how it all ties together with quantum immortality, the afterlife, simulation theory, whatever ends up being true. Maybe there's all parts of it that are true and they combine into something different than what we expect. You could see multiple universes where, yeah, if you're a spirit, you're just a tiny fragment of their soul left behind, the imprint of who they were. Like if you're on a bed, on a mattress that's soft, and you get up, the mattress springs back, but it takes time. And I think that's basically the idea of what I'm thinking a spirit is. And this one is very old, so maybe the imprint he left behind on the universe was very potent. And because of that, it takes a long time to fade away, to be restored. Now maybe, yeah, breaking down the old building will help to reset the mattress of the universe. I hope so. I hope he finds his peace. And now time for the quote of the day, the mark of an educated mind, to entertain a thought without accepting it. Aristotle. It's how we can steelman other people's positions. I think the best way to argue and have discourse with other people is to try to understand their positions. I think a lot of people are afraid to do that now. They think that even conceiving of someone else's idea or position will somehow infect them. But that's a terrible mindset if you ask me. We have to be able to consider other possibilities, ideas, even if they're wrong, even if they're disgusting in some ways. Unless you're able to do that, then you're operating on a position that your current mindset and worldview and opinions are infallible. there's no possibility that anything else is correct. And so if you talk with someone else, you're not actually trying to have a discourse with them. You're just saying, I have to win. I have to beat them because they're wrong. There's no way they're not. It's a very dangerous mindset. And sadly, I think a lot of people are falling prey to it. How do you fix that? Case notes are file 10,022. The pencil that controls the world. Okay, so be honest. If you saw a flying donkey just parading through the sky, the first thought would be, can I ride on it? Like a hippogriff? That would be my first thought anyways. That'd be fun. Just don't fall off. Isn't it cool how the universe's errors can often play into our favor? At least some copies of us in certain universes. In another universe, probably the mechanical pencil case just vanished, and then reappeared in this universe. For you, it's to your benefit. Small one, but still. But imagine if it was more notable or potent. All the gold in Fort Knox in one universe disappears and then reappears in our Fort Knox. So gold just duplicates, double. It's like the Harry Potter scene in Gringotts where they touch a cup and it multiplies because of the Gemino curse, I think it was. Kind of like that, but in actual reality. Case notes for the bonus file. Unexpected inspection by my dead boss. That is an extremely dedicated boss, yeah. One final inspection before he departs the mortal coil, or even within the last strands of the coil. Make sure his workers are doing okay. Kinda respect that. But to be serious, that would be terrifying. To glimpse his soul just before or maybe just after he died. Dying in a car accident, maybe there was water involved, which is why he's pale, or maybe it's just how he looked after, we all die, we lose color in our skin because there's no blood flow. I would be freaked out, that's for sure, and I don't know if I could go back to work there. I mean, maybe I'd be okay and mellow out after a few weeks of not seeing him, but if it's a common reoccurrence, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Even if he doesn't have malicious intent, like even if he's just this dedicated boss that wants to manage his employees after death, like, chill, bro. This is too much. We can't handle that. At least Alex took pride in his work. That's one thing to say, and may his soul rest in peace, whatever little fragment is left. And now time for the quote of the day. You cannot conquer a free man. The most you can do is kill him. Robert Heinlein. Yeah, this gives me 1984 vibes, where the whole point of that was to control thought, control the mind, control the deeper element inside it, maybe the soul. You can kill someone, that's easy, very easy. But to really get into their mind and make them betray everything that they hold dear, every principle and thought that they cherish, well, that is truly to break a person, to destroy them entirely, much more than killing them ever could. If you make someone betray themselves, that's where they're wiped clean. Avoid that at all costs, no matter what happens to you, no matter what challenges come your way or what people say. Just be true to yourself. Case notes for file 10,023. My father is unbound by Spacetime. If you ask your dad what he was thinking about when you called him, or maybe a few minutes before you called him, my guess is it was about you. I think this astral projection can happen sometimes for specific individuals, maybe if their mind is open to it. Usually their soul is drawn or pushed out towards what they're thinking about, something important to them, usually a person, and in this case you. And not even necessarily thinking about you in the present moment, but just in a general sense, maybe thinking about memories of you growing up or anything related to you. The soul would then gravitate, be drawn, maybe pushed, drawn towards the person where the memories are so connected and powerful. It's just metaphysical. The soul doesn't care about distance. 4 miles is like 4 plank lengths. It doesn't matter. It can go there instantaneously. Spooky action at a distance that Einstein would say with quantum entanglement. Everything is connected in that sense where, you can't transmit information, but there is a pathway, like a highway, that can be traversed. Our souls can, at least. The other possibility, if it's not astral projection, is just multiversal peering. You were seeing your dad because he was either living with you in another universe or just visiting for the night. And he obviously didn't hear you. He was just going down and maybe hungry, getting a snack from the kitchen. Something like that. Simple. Case notes for file 10,024. The dog with a grand secret. So is this a buffered glitch? A glitch in the buffer? If the universe is buffered ahead, the information's already there, we made our choices and we're just experiencing them again. Well, in that case, you played out the events twice for some reason instead of just once. So now this would be the third time. And it was like a reset. But maybe not, because it's not a total reset unless you lost, I guess if it was only a minute or two, maybe you wouldn't even have realized that time was lost. Maybe you repeated a couple minutes. That's a small enough time where you may not even have noticed. I mean, I don't necessarily know exactly what time it is right now versus in 2 minutes. So I could lose 2 minutes without really knowing if I'm just, hanging out at home or something. So maybe it was just a buffered reset. Now that said, the other possibility is maybe your dog is really just that powerful, beyond anything we can possibly comprehend, and he's just biding his time. We should be on the lookout. Case notes for the creepy file number 84, an unearthly South Haven experience. So people have suggested this could be related to mimicry. A mimic can, of course, mimic appearances and sounds of people you know and love, like your father. And they try to do this to lure people into isolated areas and then kidnap them, torture them. I'm not sure exactly what the motive is, but whatever it is, I don't think it's anything good. So it's a good thing that you didn't go and you weren't drawn like the mermaid, the sirens, the ocean siren. My impression is it's more than just that. I mean, if a mimic is there, does it create this atmosphere over an entire town of despair and anxiety? Like you describe feeling this great unease just by being there. So it seems like there's an actual presence beyond just a mimic. Maybe there is also a mimic, but there's something even higher level than that. And you know this because as soon as you left, you instantly described feeling better. So there was actually like this hanging, looming cloud over the town. I wonder if anyone else felt that. Maybe looking up the Facebook group for that town, maybe people speak about that. Maybe people who live there are so used to it, they don't even realize anything's wrong. Maybe if they go for a vacation, they realize, damn, things feel better out here. What's going on? And now time for the quote of the day. The earth is the cradle of humanity, but humanity cannot remain in the cradle forever. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Damn, do I love this quote. And it applies not just to humanity as a whole, although at the abstract, the higher level, you can just think of, we need to leave the planet. We can't just be a single planet species. If we really want to get out there, well, we've been to the moon once, presumably, right? Let's go to Mars. Let's see what's out there. Now, it takes such a long time, but there's ways around it. We have the technology. We could literally build a spaceship right now. Well, first we build a base on the moon, and then bring materials up there slowly, and then we can build a larger spacecraft in the low gravity around the moon. And from there, we can build a spacecraft that is capable of rotation, internal rotation, to create the effect of gravity effectively. For those living on the ring that is rotating around itself, around a central axis point. If you rotate at I don't know the exact math right now, but depending on the size of it, you wouldn't actually need extremely fast rotation. So then things could remain mostly normal in terms of human perception. That would eliminate the problems on the human body of low gravity. Even though astronauts in the International Space Station, they work out religiously, like every single day, hardcore. It's not enough to reduce the muscle loss, the atrophy of the muscles and the bones. Coming back to Earth is a nightmare if they spend any notable amount of time up there. So we could build a spacecraft that has that. We could build a spacecraft that is surrounded in a harder shell that is layered with a lot of water to absorb the cosmic rays. We could even build a EM generator on the spacecraft to mimic the magnetosphere of the Earth that protects us from solar radiation, because that's the other concern right now that astronauts have. Any prolonged voyage would result in a lot of radiation for anyone aboard, unless we shield it. But that's the thing, we can. We have the technology to do all this. It's just a question of will and, of course, money and time. But it's theoretically possible. We could absolutely go to Mars. And I know Elon Musk wants to do it. I think it's a bit ambitious. I think a lunar base is the first step, so you can actually build a reliable craft that could do it in a way that, doesn't harm the people aboard. They can remain relatively sane, experience gravity, the effect, and be protected from solar radiation, all that good stuff. But yeah, we can do it. I think within maybe 3 decades, we could have a base on Mars. Cool stuff, man. Can't wait.